What up, witches, and welcome to Witchin and Bitchin, a podcast. I'm your host, Darren.
And I'm Vicky. How are you all today? I hope you're doing really well.
Really.
And I sounded like Xena then. I'm like,
like a yeah. That probably didn't even come through the microphone. That would
no, I actually did it. It kind of cut out a little bit. It wasn't as high.
Yeah,
good. It's all fine. But anyway, I hope you're all doing great, whatever you are doing today while you're listening.
So if anyone knows me personally, they know that I've been doing a whole lot of nothing recently. So we thought we'd smash out a few episodes back to back, just because of the fact that I'm still in lockdown, losing my mind just a little bit, losing my mind.
Just a little bit.
And Vicky has been.
I'd never had my mind to really start with. Let's face it, I can't.
That's not where I was going to go with that, but I love it. Let's just keep it. Let's just go with that. Oh my God. Oh, wow. On that. Oh my God.
I was going to say, full disclosure, this is a Friday afternoon when we're recording this.
So today we want to talk about something that I see it all over the internet. I don't know why I'm playing with my hoodie.
I don't know. It's cool.
Yep. So something I see all the time on the internet where people talk about finding a deity, working with a deity. How do you know which deity is for you? And then always it gets into, like, every time I see a conversation about the gods or the goddesses or whatever.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Do you know what I do? I go to the pantry, I grab the popcorn, I sit there, I open it up, and I just start to read, because it always turns into a clusterfuck of a shit show of a. Yeah. Anyway, it's like next level of back and forward, because everyone has an opinion about this topic, and everyone thinks that their opinion is the only
one. Yeah. And I think, and that's the problem with it all, is that we just think that there's the one opinion. There's one way to do it.
I nearly flipped into an ooh cha.
I was waiting for it. I can hear the voice going too. I'm like, I was waiting for it.
Full disclosure.
Give people context for that.
Full disclosure, I have just smashed an entire season of The Real Housewives of not New York, not Atlanta, not Beverly Hills, not Orange County, and not Vancouver or Sydney or Melbourne or any of the other ones, or even Dallas, even though I like a bit of Dallas. No, but I've been watching The Real Housewives of Potomac. So it's now become my favorite season. Favorite
and he's been watching it so much that he's actually now talking the same.
Yeah. And but I also don't want to appropriate certain phrases.
No.
Although, technically it's not, though, because a lot of these phrases that come from Black culture have also made it into ballroom culture, which then went into drag culture, which then went into gay culture. So talking about kikiing and all that kind of stuff, like, we say that in the gay world.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, I don't say it to my friends, but that's because they don't understand the reference. So then I have to explain it, and then it's kind of lost all.
It's just kind of lost all oomph, then, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So anyway, we've done a great tangent already when we first started.
It's a Friday afternoon. What do you expect?
I know, that's it. What do you expect?
So
let's take it back. Let's go back to deity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, starting off with the dictionary definition.
Yes.
A deity or a god is a supernatural being considered divine or sacred, according to the Oxford Dictionary. Yeah. It defines a deity as a god or goddess in a polytheistic religion, or anything revered as divine. Now, we could go on to saying, you could even extend that further by saying it's a being with powers greater than those of ordinary humans, but who interact with humans positively or negatively in ways that carry humans to a new level of consciousness beyond the grounded preoccupations of ordinary life.
Well, see, wasn't that a little bit of a philosophical bomb there? I like that.
Because when you think about it, like, deity can mean so many different things depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
And depending on their worldview, and depending on how they were raised, and depending on how much education they have in the topic. Because some people just don't know any better, and they only think of one or two things, and they think that that's the only thing.
Yeah. Because it
sound very good. You know what I mean?
I know where you're going with that. It's all good. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I guess the most common perceived kind of definition is that it's you can interchange it with God or goddess, I think. But really, if you look at that definition as it is, there's so much more scope to it.
Well, yeah, it could be
just that.
Elementals, could be nature spirits, could be the divas, it could even be angels or ascended masters, or all those other different categories or subcategories of spirit energy.
Yeah, that's right.
Arguably say that they are a deity. Like, for example, okay, I've got some up here for those that are watching on the tube.
Yeah.
The one on the far right is Buddha. Now, Buddha is not actually a deity.
No.
Just the same as Buddhists do not worship Buddha. Buddha is nothing more than a symbol of something that they're aspiring to be.
Yes.
Now, based on the definition I just read out, though, because it's an entity with supernatural abilities that interacts with humans and in order to lift their consciousness, you could argue that Buddha is a deity.
Yep.
Just that most Buddhists do not worship him like one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Same if I then go in the middle here to Kuan Yin. Yeah, now, to me, she's one of my patrons. I interchangeably use the word deity or goddess with bodhisattva or ascended master. So for me, those terms are not independent. Like, they can blur the lines a little.
Yeah. I
don't look at her as a goddess, even though I call her the goddess of compassion and mercy. To me, she's separate to the gods.
This is where we go into the whole warning, full disclosure. You may be a little confused.
Oh, yeah.
Because there isn't really any one way of seeing this or perceiving this. It's got to come through our own perceptions and our own lens, and how, like you said, how we were raised, what we grew up with, and all of those kind of things. That's then how we perceive those different beings, I guess, for want of a better word.
So I always think that the first place you should go is personal gnosis, first and foremost. Yes, okay, there have been books written about some gods and goddesses and deities and whatever else, insert type of spirit here.
Yeah.
But personal gnosis for me is always going to trump anything that I read in a book or on the internet especially.
Yeah, I was going to say internet especially, because anybody can put anything up there.
But that said, also books, anyone can these days.
Yeah, that's true. You can. It's not quite the same as what it perhaps was 20 years ago or whatever. So now I sound old.
No, but no, that's true though.
Not like back in the old days.
In our day, when we used to chisel things onto slates with a hammer.
I know. What is that?
Fucking calm down.
I know, right?
But so even based on what we're saying on this podcast, don't take our word as quote unquote gospel or whatever else you want to call it.
Food for thought.
Exactly. We're just trying to plant some seeds.
To
do a little bit of hoeing, turn the soil, and then let it grow.
That's it.
Yeah,
just different concepts, because there is, and maybe you might have seen something as just one particular way, and then hearing another version or different concepts, or that there is a possibility of another concept, can lead you to kind of go down that path and learn a little bit more about it. Because even within, I guess, so like the witchcraft community, or I don't really know, what is that collective term really that we can say in this
the
whole
witchcraft community,
I guess, because not everybody, I know a lot of times, because there is a lot that comes from sort of a Wiccan perspective, which does have deity, god, goddess energy. There's actually a lot of paths that don't.
Yeah, they're completely secular.
And I mean, you can even be atheist, have no, and it still is all a part of that path. Yeah. So it's not that it's just a be all and end all, that it's definitely in there. It's, there's a lot of scope in there.
So to take it to one more philosophical level.
Ooh.
So I'm just saying, because for me, the concept of, like, I used to have the biggest hang up about the word God.
I did too.
And that was because of my upbringing.
I'll be honest, I still do a little bit.
See, I think I've desensitized myself to it now, because I've done a fair amount of inner work about my religious hang-ups from my past.
Yep.
So because of that, like, I've explored it and deconstructed it and whatever, that now I view, because when I was raised Christian, if anyone ever spoke about Allah, I was like, oh my God, like, and I'd picture some demon thing because it's from a different religion. Yep. Even though now, in my older, more educated and open-minded, mystic-minded sense, I know that the word Allah is just literally the Arabic term for God.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
They're one and the same. They don't look any different. There's nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it just means God. And when they say God, they don't mean the Judeo-Christian kind of philosophy of God, the Abrahamic traditions, picture this big, like, white-haired, long-bearded man in the, like, what I picture to be Father Christmas. Like,
I was just about to say the same thing. I'm like, fun fact, aren't we just describing Father Christmas without the hat and stuff, really? What is that?
Yeah,
that's a whole new thing, isn't it?
To me,
why is that like the...
To me, that's Father Christmas in his, like, nightgown.
That's
like,
a summer version.
He's in his nightie, like, you know, he's about to take a nap, like, you know.
He's on his off season. It's in his off season. It's just chilling, doing his thing.
Yeah, so obviously we have people like Michelangelo who drew the, you know, that two fingers touching, like Elliot. Not really. It's like, you know, the creation story where God and Adam touch fingers. So from the Renaissance period is where we really start to get this image of God. But if you actually look at scripture, look at like any kind of philosophical text, God is nothing more than a concept of something outside of humans.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. It's not one person who waves a magic wand and poof, the world was created. All of these stories are literally just stories to explain existence. They're philosophical stories, if more than anything. That we write these stories and learn from them to try to give us morals and ethics and whatnot. But anyway, I know I've gone off on a tangent.
Well, not completely, because we also then to be able to understand it and to be able to comprehend and all of those kind of things, we personify that. And that's where in some cases we have those different gods, goddesses, entities, whatever, beings.
Yeah. So
we personified it.
As Vicky said before, like, we're not saying that by listening to this episode that we're saying that witches should always adopt a god. No, not at all.
No. This is all...
We just want to explain it because I see the question come up so often.
Yeah.
Of like, do I need to have a god? Do I need to worship a god? Firstly and foremost, no, you don't. No. If you don't resonate with any form of not extraterrestrial, like extra,
well, you can if you want to.
Some sort of like superpowered being or personification of
that personification beyond,
Yeah, then if you don't want to work with that and you're like happy to just call it universe, I mean,
do that.
Mystics will argue that you're still believing in deity, but anyway, let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
But if you just want to be secular and just say, I'm releasing this spell out to universe and the universe does whatever it wants with it, by all means, like, you don't have to, or you may not even refer to as universe. You might just say planet Earth. I'm releasing it out into space around planet Earth for it to just happen.
And or you're just simply working with energy that's just around, which is no different than working with electricity or something else. Like, it's just a thing. So again, it's not a prerequisite.
No.
It's really, this is one of the topics that really is, I know there's a lot of people that will perhaps have their necessary opinion, but this is something that is really, like you touched on earlier, it's that personal gnosis. It really is what resonates with you, how you perceive things. It is really a very personal thing. And if it doesn't resonate, then it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. And if it does, then that's awesome too. And it can be a particular path or things like that, which we'll explain a little bit more, some other concepts, I guess. But
well, so
it's a really big thing.
Really, the purpose of this is just to explain what are the gods and how relevant are they really when we think about it? Because you have to think of the lens in which that society viewed these thought forms or these entities when they were kind of revered and honored. So, I mean, because, I mean, in essence, okay, let's talk about the gods, just how their evolution in the nutshell version. Yeah. So it's essentially, they're an interesting topic because they cause so much controversy. But anyway.
They do. And because it is a little bit of a rabbit hole. Like, you can take it so many different ways, and then you think about one thing and then it kind of brings you to something else. So, but this is I guess a nice way to kind of.
Yeah, because originally, so obviously most cultures were polytheistic back in the day. So believing in many gods. So polytheistic, poly meaning many, theism is the belief in, or like to believe in many gods, something. Many entities, many deities. Whereas monotheism is what you would call, like, Christianity is monotheism. They only believe in one God. Just if people don't know that term. So cultures were polytheistic, believing in many gods. So they saw that the divine has an abundant nature with male and female aspects, or masculine and feminine aspects, depending on which word you want to use. and named all aspects of the divine. So therefore there was like a goddess of the earth, a goddess of the moon, a god of the sun, a god of writing, a god of travel, a goddess of love, and so on, until every aspect of nature, every location, every quality had a divine ruler. So every single part of nature, like basically in the old religions, they believed that nothing could just happen. There was no coincidences. The crops grew because the god of agriculture blessed us with abundance and growth and wealth and whatnot. You know what I mean? As an example.
Yeah.
So modern psychologists think of these divine aspects as archetypes. And many cultures had an earth goddess, but each had a different name and story for her. Then these polytheistic cultures lost control to monotheism. Which is the belief in one god. And some monotheistic groups were simply cults devoted to one of these gods from the old religions. So they didn't abolish the old gods. They just worshipped one only.
Just picked one, basically.
And honored only that one. And they wished to wipe out the worship of all the others. So there were a lot of cults back in history. If you look at like Greco-Roman times, where they would have like their temple to Apollo, and they said only Apollo was the one true god and the rest of the gods were bullshit. For example, because it's a cult mentality. And then other monotheistic groups sought to unify the nature of the divine so practitioners could see they were all connected to one spirit. And that's the Abrahamic traditions. So like, now why I say Abrahamic tradition, in case people don't understand that term, when we call it Abrahamic, we're referring to Abraham, who is a person that appears in the Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. So when people say Abrahamic, it's just the umbrella term for Judeo-Christian, Islamic combined. So then some cultures often converted the pagan gods to saints or heroes or villains in mythology. And then goddess worship was funneled into reverence of Mother Mary, usually. Or, for example, in Ireland, the goddess Brie or Bridget was named Saint Bridget, as we spoke about in the recent episode on Imbolc. And then the horn gods of Pan and Cernunnos, who you can see here, were actually fused with the Christian concept of the devil. Now, notice I emphasize Christian concept of the devil, because witches do not believe in a devil.
Well, traditional witchcraft does, but not the same one.
Well,
not in the same context. They say the devil, but it's not the same context.
No. And the modern revival of paganism and other nature-based religions has created a revival of the old pre-Christian images of the god. So appearing in meditations, in dreams, in visions, and they act as guides and healers to modern-day mystics or modern-day seekers. So that's kind of like in a nutshell.
Like the kind of
evolution
big umbrella. How it's all kind of come through and how it's come down.
So from there, I guess we could kind of talk about it in context of like, so I've spoken about it many times when I've talked about my own philosophy or belief system. How do I explain this in simple terms? So I once gave the analogy of the multifaceted diamond. That it's like it has a million of facets, millions and millions and millions.
All the little sides.
All the little sides of the diamond. And to a Christian, they hold it so close to them. Their Christian belief system is so close to them that when they look through their own view, and I'm not even just saying Christian collectively, I'm saying, let's just say Catholic. They look at theirs and it's so beautiful and pristine and clear. They can see universal energy, God through it. But from their angle, because they're so close to it, all the other facets are distorted. And then if you move even just slightly across to the next facet, which is Protestant. So Protestantism and Catholicism, I can still see through their facet and it still looks beautiful and good, but mine's even more clear. So like, I can see the similarities, but then the ones further away seem distorted. If you could do that with all the different Christian beliefs and then gradually move around and then eventually hit like Hinduism and then you hit Buddhism and then you hit like Islam and Zoroastrianism. Anyway, I could go on and on and on and on. All of them hold it so close to them that their view is clear and other views are distorted. Now, I'm not saying all people like this, but generally speaking, fanatic, really passionate religious people. In mysticism, we learn to step back from the diamond and appreciate all of it in its entirety.
Yeah.
So when we do that, we learn to appreciate all the facets for their own qualities, because every facet gives its own little sparkle.
I was going to say its own little beauty, its own little bit.
Yeah. So kind of that's how you get to like that. That's kind of like where I've gotten to now in my life.
Yeah.
In that I can talk to Knunos one-on-one, and I view him as his own entity or his own personification.
Yeah. Separate
to the rest of them, and yet connected to all of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because in my mind, he's connected to all things, but he's separate to all things. Like, so for me, the personality, when I'm speaking to my version of spirit, source, universe, energy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The great spirit, whatever, the one. When I'm talking to Knunos specifically, then I'm talking to that personification or incarnation of the divine.
Of that energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So because he has a very different energy to, for example, when I'm talking to the divine through Kuan Yin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which you would expect.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the same with you when you talk to your
Yeah,
group?
it is. Yeah, it is a little bit. Because I personally see them, I don't see them as archetypes, because when it's more as like an archetype, that's more, I guess, not actually
an umbrella term, like a dark
god. Yeah, it's a bit more, and it's not necessarily that they are actually their own separate entity kind of thing. So see, it actually is really it's really tricky to explain, isn't it? I guess one thing that I was taught at the very beginning, it wasn't taught, but it was one concept that was given to me, and I quite liked it, in that we had the all, and then from the all it sort of split to the two, to the masculine and feminine qualities, and then from there then you have all the different gods and goddesses that have all their different aspects and things like that. So I personally see them as their own being. So when I'm talking to Odin, I'm talking to Odin, not a archetype concept kind of thing. I talk to you as an actual being, and they are very, like you said, it's a very different quality. Each one is very different, no different than if we were talking to each other. Like no two people are really the same. We all have their own sort of nuances, I guess. I don't know if I've even remotely explained that.
No, you have. I was gonna throw a spatter in the mix.
Oh God, here we go.
And then say, but then you could almost argue though that, but we're all manifestations of the divine mind.
Yes, that's right. So it goes even deeper again. We can all go that we're all connected. We've all come from. So you can kind of go another layer, because then you've got under there, you've got like the gods, and then you can go with us as well, that we're them and they are. It gets hard then. It gets really hard. So
we start splitting hairs.
I know. But this is how I guess it's really to highlight that fact again, that coming back to that point that you said at the very beginning of this personal gnosis, and starting to become really clear on what your personal
what do you believe
gnosis, what do you believe in? How do you perceive them? How do you see them? I often think that deity, spirit, universe, whatever term you want to use, I think that they do come to us in a way that we can perceive it. And we do that through, I guess, our very human and very, I guess, mundane, in a psychological way, our lenses and our perceptions that have been created, and beliefs and whatever, as we've moved through our life. So then they come in that form to us that we can recognize, I guess. So that's where I think, even if say for instance, like we all know Odin, but somebody else who may work with Odin may actually see a very different side to him, or may be a very different perception of him.
That's no different to like your interactions with Chris, my husband.
Yeah.
Are going to be very different to my interactions with him, because our relationships are different, and the versions of him that you see are filtered through your own experience or what I've told you.
Yeah.
So then your views are formed based on what you've heard from me, or seen for yourself, or stalked him on Facebook, whatever. You know what I mean? You know?
Yeah, so that's right.
It's no different to the relationships we form with the gods.
Yeah. It's that same kind of thing. And the only real way to get to that, if that is something that you want to pursue, or it's an energy that you want to pursue, is to start to work with it yourself, as in a personal. You can look at all of the information that's out there, if it's a particular god or goddess or something like that you want to work with. You can look at the information, but then go to like meditate or whatever your version of that is, to connect so that you find what your information is, what your perception is. And
also, that, just on that note, that can change over time too. Like I remember me when I was first getting into witchcraft, because my point of reference was Scott Cunningham, which was heavily Wiccan. I believed in a god and a goddess, but because of my hangups about god energy, I focused on the goddess, and I was all about goddess worship. And all of my patrons that I would talk about were goddess energy. So, like, for example, I was massively attracted to Artemis Diana, who is the goddess of the hunt. No wonder that now, having released all my hangups about god energy, I'm now with Gnosis, god of the hunt.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is what I mean. Like when people say like, "Oh, Gnosis is coming into my life," well, he's always been there, but I was, because of my own hangups and my own issues that I needed to deal with about my sense of masculinity, I couldn't create space for him to present himself. Because I rejected anything that was related to god energy. I just pushed it away and rejected it. Because I wasn't ready to see it. And that's not to say that everyone else listening to this is going to be going through the same. And the whole new reason why you're not feeling comfortable with the gods is because you have a hang up. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying my personal experience was that. But even like if I was to unpack that now in my head, over the years, my gods that I would talk about or honor in some way also evolved with my own education as well.
That's right.
So the more that I knew about certain pantheons, like I was massively into the Egyptian pantheon when I was younger, massively. Hence why I think Egyptian
was one of those ones. Like I was fascinated by it as well. It's just ancient Egypt is just, I don't know.
It's a whole other planet.
It is.
Like I've got here two of them. So I often used Anubis and Bastet as my representations of the god and goddess because I liked their energy. And that was just like a place marker. For god energy and goddess energy. For no other reason. It had nothing to do with their archetypes or what they represented or any of that. It was just that was the personification that I was comfortable with. But then as I grew up and because like we went through a bit of a phase of where Egyptian stuff was very pop culture.
It was. It was.
And then it kind of disappeared for a while. And then there was that huge phase of like Buddhism where I had such a collection of Buddhas everywhere in my house, like so many. And then that kind of subsided. Then I went from Buddhism, I went into kind of like Hinduism, and I had posters of Hindu gods all over my room. My mum used to come in and was like worried that one day I was going to start chanting in like Sanskrit. I mean, it did eventually happen, but anyway.
I was about to say. That did come true. That's okay.
With the Gayatri mantra. And then that kind of subsided. And I went through a phase of being massively into the Viking gods and like the Aesir and the...
Veneer.
That's it, Veneer and all of them. And then that kind of subsided. And then I went through the Greco-Roman phase. Like it's just these cyclical kind of waves of god energy. And it's not until like you fast forward the clock to 20 something years later that now I'm like, because people would always ask me like, oh, so was that like a phase? I'm like, well, no, it was just based on the knowledge that I had at the time. That's how I would view divinity.
And I think it's also, it's the person you were at that time, like that particular energy, that particular personification had meaning or reference to you. Whereas now you might mean a completely different version of yourself. You've changed, grown and evolved, and so that part doesn't necessarily resonate as much anymore, so that it can keep moving.
I still remember, shout out to Ronald, not that he listens to my podcast, but because it's not his thing, but shout out to Ronald, my best friend. I've known him since I was 5 years old. He was like stood by me at my wedding day, all that stuff. He's one of those friends that I can literally just not see for a few months, and then when I see him, like it's like nothing.
It's exactly the same.
Exactly. So we've been friends since besties since we're 5. And I still remember in early years of primary school, because I thought, like, as I was back then I believed that I had Danish ancestry or something based on the stories that I was told. Now I've found out that they're all bullshit, but whatever. I still believed it back then. And I remember one time being in the playground and we were having a bit of a spat, and I said to him, I'm going to call Thor and he's going to use a lightning bolt and kill you. And he's like, well, I'm going to call Buddha and he's going to sit in front of me and block your lightning bolt. We were having the most nonsensical conversation.
I love it.
Where I was going to call upon Thor. And this is like, I was like 6 or 7 years old. I don't even know where I got that reference from.
I was going to say, but here it comes.
and like I thought, I'm going to use him to attack you with his lightning bolt.
But he's going all Buddha and I'm gonna defend against you.
Because apparently Buddha's belly is a massive shield. I don't know.
That's it. But again, it's something that's in that psyche, and it's what resonates with you, or that it comes through for you, that personal gnosis and that personal thing.
Yeah.
That's cute. I love it.
But going back to what you were saying, let's kind of deconstruct that a little bit more in regards to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. High five.
Yeah. High five.
So let's talk about the concept of the one. So this is common in a lot of, hang on, how do I get into this without getting too philosophical and too specific? So the idea of the one is usually the indigenous cultures have some version of the one.
Yeah.
So
even through like Hermetics and things like that still has that version of the all. It's just usually under a different name.
Yeah. And so they say that all people are connected to each other as well as to the earth and everything on it. So it's like, I am you and you are me, and I'm God and God is within me, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And what one person does affects and influences the whole. So this is the concept of collective consciousness is kind of derived from this belief. So like on this planet, we're all connected to the water we drink, the air we breathe, the land we stand on. From a metaphysical point of view, we're also connected to everything on a subtle level as well. So there is one spirit running through all things, one great creative force, but it has many different expressions.
Yes.
So the concept of the one is really kind of the root of a lot of philosophies, where they say that everything comes from the one. Yeah. And it's usually a genderless, it's like source.
Yeah, it does.
The great
it's not,
spirit.
It's not
universe.
A male or it's not a masculine or feminine energy or really a particular person. It's even most times not even a personification. It's even beyond a personification as well. It's just is.
It just is. It's existence. It's like in Hinduism, they talk about the Maya. The Maya is not a thing. It's everything and it's nothing.
Yeah.
It transcends all perceptions of existence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's basically, so there's the one. And then from there, you then spoke about the two. So that's when it tends to split out. So because you have the creative and receptive sides of life, we then split it out. Like if you think of the yin yang, the black and white with the little seed, the little dot of each other, that's a common representation of the two. We spoke about this
masculine, feminine.
Yeah, we spoke about this in the last episode that we recorded about Hermetics, where you have the dual, like the two things that both have a seed of each other, and it's a spectrum.
Yeah, everything's a spectrum, and one need both. Everything has both. Yeah. Some version of both in there.
And sadly, because of the misconception of certain people, this concept of the two often got lumped with, because you believe that everything has an equal and opposite. So you have light and dark, black and white, good and bad,
good and evil kind of thing. Yeah.
That's where this concept of separating the two, that white is right and good and black or dark is bad and evil.
Yeah.
That's where this misconception has come from. And then it's kind of, that was, I guess, the basis of a lot of beliefs, like Zoroastrianism believe in this great battle between good and evil.
Yeah.
And Christianity then took a lot of its early beliefs from Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, where you have like the God and you've got...
And the devil.
And the devil kind of thing. Yeah.
And
that even sort of happened a little bit, I think, in this resurgence after we went through like all the monotheistic.
Monotheistic.
Yeah, that one. But it was very much... usually the masculine. So it was very much the patriarchy. Then we kind of had this flip where for a while there, especially early on, say 30, 40 years ago, that it was a very big surgence of the goddess and just the goddess. So it was sort of still out of balance.
Yeah.
And that's where we're still talking about when it became the two, they're still, even though it's become two, they're both equal and needed. And that's where we keep having this the balance keeps getting shifted.
Yes.
From one expression to the other.
And even if you look at pre-Christian, like I'm talking ancient history, like you usually find that evolution of humankind, if you go back, I'm talking tens of thousands of years to early man, when we first started believing in something outside of self, you almost see this flux between patriarchal society and matriarchal society, then back to patriarchal society and back to matriarchal. And we're constantly going up and down above and below this line.
Yeah. Yep.
We're never really hitting that point, but it's usually the points when we cross over the imaginary line is normally when there tends to be a form of peace.
I was about to say that when we're kind of cruising along pretty good. Yeah. When you've got that nice balance, and it just highlights the fact that we need that balance. Neither one is more important than the other. It's about finding that little flux.
Exactly. Now, from the two, you could then arguably say that in some belief systems, you then have a trinity or the three. Yeah. So in Wicca, or even a lot of goddess worship, you would say the maiden, mother, and crone.
Yeah.
In Christianity, you have the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. In Hinduism, you have Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu.
Yeah.
Wait, actually, I said that the wrong way, didn't I? Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Whichever way it is, or even on the flip side, you had is it?
I can't remember.
Durga, Saraswati or Parvati.
Oh yes,
I think it's Parvati, and then Kali.
Parvati and Kali, yeah.
I can never get those. I always get those confused.
And it's that whole concept as well as like life, death, and rebirth.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Or in Hinduism, it's that creation.
Yeah.
Like
I can't remember what the middle part is.
It's always
then we got destruction.
It's always like maintenance or existing or something. So you have creation, and then it's that continuing, and then destruction.
Then you got destruction, and then around it goes again. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that concept of the Trinity, or even in the hang on, what pantheon is this? The fates, past, present, future, intertwining.
They're in a few. They're in Norse culture. They're in they're
Greek
also in Greek. I think Greek or Roman.
Yeah, we'll just say Greco-Roman collectively.
Yeah, in there. Yep.
Yeah. So it's that's right. It's creation, preservation, and destruction.
Preservation. Yeah, of course. Like, what's the middle bit? I can't remember the middle bit.
I found it in my notes here.
Well done.
So you were right with regards to Greek as well, because they had the fates known as the Moirai. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Moirai. And then you have, obviously, in Celtic culture, they had the same thing, the triple goddess. In Catholicism, I've already talked about that, so I'm scanning through my notes. In ceremonial magic, you had the threefold formula written in the chant of IAO for Isis, the mother goddess, then Apophis or Apophis Typhon, the serpent monster of destruction, and Osiris, Isis's husband brother.
It's all on another level.
Husband brother, who is the risen and resurrected God.
Yep.
Yeah. So you had the IAO. Yeah. And then in alchemy, they talk about hang on, what was it? In the spiritual discipline of transformation, as well as laboratory work, the universal forces were originally a polarity described as sulfur and mercury, and they basically split that out into three as well. So you had sulfur was the fiery active male principle, while mercury was the silvery cool receptive feminine principle. But then that evolved over time too. I can't see it in my notes right here what the third one was.
The third one is
I think, was it salt? They added the principle of salt.
Yes, salt. That's
which is fixed form, rigidity, and solidness. And then from there, you can look at astrological correspondences where you have cardinal, fixed, and mutable.
Yeah.
So the Trinity then became like the pop cultural, like it's the thing that everyone wanted to do, everything people wanted to believe in. Then certain cultures had the four powers. So we've gone from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So the four powers, as we know as witches, it's the four elements.
Yep.
But equally, the four elements, you could also have
in Celtic, one of the Celtic, I can't think which one, but there's like the four winds. There's all of those different. Even if you go into early like medicine and things like that, you've got the the humors.
Yes.
So you've got like hot, dry. I can't remember them all.
Wet and cold.
Wet and cold. Is that all it is? No, there's something else in there as well, but that's okay. You can look them up. The four humors. So, but there's again that split of different aspects.
And those are normally transposed or like corresponded with one of the four directions, north, south, east, and west. Like there's basically all those types of intermingling layers and correspondences. And then when you then start to intermingle those on top of the others, because you had, here it was, the elemental qualities. You have cold, wet, warm, and dry.
Yep.
So earth is considered the north in the northern hemisphere because it's cold and dry. South is considered air because it's warm and wet.
Yeah.
Fire is in the east because it's warm and dry. And then water is in the west because it's cold and wet. Obviously, for southern hemisphere, we flip north and south because our cold and dry is Antarctica and our warm and wet is the tropics.
Yeah.
So if you look at then applying those four overlaid with the other three being in astrology, that's where you get 12 signs of the astrological zodiac or 12 animals of the Chinese astrology.
Yeah.
So 3 times 4 equals 12. That's how we got to those. Then we had this adding of the quintessence. So the fifth element beyond the physical plane of existence, which we either call it ether or we call it spirit or we call it, what's another word? I don't think there's other words for it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say consciousness.
Yeah.
Life force maybe.
Because even just to call it just spirit is like almost
still
dumbed down.
Yeah, I was going to say that's still a very encompassing term.
No, because it's realistically a combination of all four elements together.
Yeah, it's sort of that innate consciousness that everything has.
Yeah.
That spark of life, that life force. That's how I always see it personally. Like when we're talking ether or spirit, as in like relation to the four elements. Yeah. It's kind of that animating principle, maybe.
Well, because like some people call it akasha, some people call it prana, and even in yoga or in Hinduism, prana or pranayama is like the life force. So it's because it's all the things combined together. It's a thing that gives life, and so it's kind of connected to yet separate from the other four basal elements. And then, I mean, if we want to go one step further, the 3 times 4 became the 12. If you go Chinese astrology, the 12 times the 5 elements in Chinese astrology became 60. So it's like there's a reason why all these numbers have so much power, because our belief system is so essentially focused on all of them.
Yeah.
So when people say that they struggle to understand deity or how to go down that road of exploration, no shit.
Yeah. I think the first thing is to really define what your definition of deity is.
Yeah.
Because different paths have different things. Like we've mentioned gods and goddesses, but then there's a lot of paths that don't have gods or goddesses in it. There may be different beings, different spirits, different demons, whatever, thought forms, egregores, all of these kind of things. So you need to kind of, I guess, work out what those terms actually mean for you and what your perception of them is. If it means a god or a goddess, then head down that path. If it means something else, then start to explore that a little bit more.
And I also implore you, is that the right word? Implore?
Yeah.
Encourage? Yeah.
Encourage.
That if you have a hang up about a particular word based on the way you were raised, just realize that words only have the power that we give them.
Yes.
And I'm saying that as someone who had such a hang up of God energy because of the word God.
Yeah. See, it's very funny because I wasn't brought up Christian or anything like that. Like I didn't have any of that stuff, but I have a real hang up about the word God. I did. I think for me though, also it wasn't necessarily that it meant like one God or that God or the God or anything like that. It was actually more blind worship.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that was more my kind of that they were all powerful. And then, because for me, then that kind of brings down, what's the point? What's the point of me doing anything if someone else is up there pulling all the strings? And I think that for me was actually when I really started to unpack it, that's what I worked out that it actually was that blind faith, and then what relationship you then have with that,
mm-hmm. that
God or energy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. There's a lot of terms that are quite emotive, and
mm-hmm.
it does, and it really will help you a lot, I think, if you do start to have a look at that a little bit. If you're looking for witchcraft and witchcraft community more from a spiritual belief system kind of thing, not just as a practice, as a craft, a practice, but if you're doing it more from that spiritual belief system, I think start to unpack some of those words a little bit, find words that are a little bit triggering or emotive, and then stop and have a look why.
And like, even if you like, this is something I used to do because I was raised in the Catholic Church. I had a massive hang up about all of Catholicism.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I unpacked it and explored all the other religions that now when I sit in a Catholic mass, because like I have to do it when I go to like a wedding or something.
Yeah.
In my mind, anytime they say the word God, I just replace it in my mind with the word universe. And all of a sudden it's a completely different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing. Words really do have the meaning that we attach to them, not necessarily their definition or anything like that. They really have what we've attached to them. So if you can kind of flip that around a little bit, but if it's what about, for instance, if somebody is starting, they are looking for that God energy, and they have kind of decided that God or goddess energy, or how they perceive deity, maybe in more that God or goddess form. Looking down different paths and things like that, what kind of tips would you give people to maybe connect with, or where to even start? Or how did some things come along for you? I know you've explained a little bit, like it was also differently what you were interested in at that time as well, kind of followed.
Because with and this is the thing, it's not just a thing of where a God would just appear into your life because you're interested in it. It's like you have to be open to it first of all. If you are open, obviously you're not going to have a God that's going to present itself to you, a God or goddess, whatever. I just say God as a simpler, so I don't have to say God or goddess.
Yep.
So you're not,
which is why I usually say deity, because I'm just like, I can't be bothered doing the whole double thing. Deities, all of them.
So you're not going to have a God or goddess present itself to you if A, you're not open to it, or B, you're not aware of it. Because you have to, at least needs to be in your radar or in your scope or in your worldview of acknowledgement before you could even have it enter your life, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So for example, as we've spoken about when we're in the dark moon of the dark moon of the dark moon before my birthday.
Yep.
If you've been listening to our show, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
My dark moon of the dark moon of my dark moon.
I love it.
I was open to receiving, because I knew that there was someone that was around me stirring. I just didn't know who they were. I could feel there was a lot of energetic.
There's someone knocking on the door.
Coincidences like that were just happening everywhere. And you know me, I don't believe in coincidence.
No.
So I said this to you off camera when we're just chatting. Too. I'm like, there's someone around. I just don't know who they are.
Yep.
And I started looking at all these different places. But like I was researching, meditating, nada. It wasn't until you said to me, why don't you just do a meditation where you open yourself up and just say, whoever's meant to come through, let them come through. Yeah. It's actually your advice that I base this off. And because I had no idea who it was going to be. And I found, I just Googled, I went on the tube and I found some meditation to meet a goddess or God, like for a deity to present itself to you. And I just went into it open-minded, no expectation. Even if, I would have been gutted if nothing came through, but just opened myself up and said, whatever's meant to be is meant to be.
Yeah.
And the one that presented himself was not one that I had researched or thought about, because Kanunos, I knew nothing about him. All I knew is there's a horned god, but other than that, nada. Didn't know a single thing about it.
Just this name that kind of pops up all over the place.
I see the name. I didn't even know how to fucking pronounce it. But when he came forward, I very distinctly saw someone coming in, because this particular meditation took you into a forest. There was mist. And then I saw this shadow. And as the shadow got closer and the light became less misty.
Yeah. Yep.
I saw this weird shape on his head, and as he came closer and closer, it became antlers. And as soon as I saw antlers, it was unmistakably Cernunnos. Like because whilst I didn't know anything about him, I knew what he looked like in all the pictures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I saw that, so I asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "I am Cernunnos." Actually, no. First he said, "You know who I am." I said, "No, but who are you?" He goes,
"Come on, give me something.
You need to ask me this." He goes, "Then you're obviously not paying attention."
Yeah.
So he presented himself as Cernunnos, and then the meditation pulled me out so quickly. I'm like, "Hey, I just met him.
I didn't even get to talk." But it opened that communication.
Yeah. And now, like, obviously we're going to touch on it on a more deeper level in the future episode, working with the Horned God. But from that point, I then did multiple meditations within the space of a week. Every single time, specifically, I said, I'm going into this meditation with the intention of connecting or reconnecting with Cernunnos.
Yeah.
And it strengthened my relationship with him. And now I have all the antlers in all the shelves, in all the rooms.
All the things.
and they serve as a constant reminder and a connection point for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just another way of me connecting with his energy. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
I went on a tangent.
It does. No, tangents are good. We love tangents.
Yeah.
We love tangents. But yeah, that's what I just thought. Like, if you're not 100% sure and you do know that there's some kind of energy around you or something, and you do want to connect with that, I guess even another way, if you're not particularly sure on a particular culture or anything like that, even perhaps start looking into your ancestry and start looking into, like, just start to research a little bit into that and see what starts to come up, because that might be just a springboard to send you somewhere else or whatever. But yeah, that's another way you can kind of connect a little bit too, or find your way a bit.
Because it's like, if I then unpack that, which I've done with you a number of times.
Yeah.
He's been knocking at my door for years and I just didn't even know it.
Long time.
It's only now that I've made the connection. It's like when a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, you have that chance where you're both at the same party at the same time at the same place.
Yeah.
Never met each other, but you exchange that one glance that one time.
Yep.
And it's not until years later
that
you're like, wait, you're connected to these people.
Yeah.
Which is a freakily, it's where Chris and I had 1 degree of separation for many years of our life before we even met.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, things like that.
Like, I'm talking 1 degree. I knew someone who he knew, and they used to go to their house, and I went to their house. Yeah, he used to go to their house, and I used to go to their house, but at different times.
Yep.
And then my sister went to school with his twin brother. Again, 1 degree of separation.
1 degree. I was going to say another direction.
And another thing, my sister used to work with Chris before they even knew that they worked together. She didn't even know that she was going to school with his twin brother. Like, there's so many different places in my life that we were 1 degree of separation away from each other, but never crossed our paths. We had common friends when we were both teenagers, but didn't know of each other.
Didn't know each other. Yeah.
Because back in those days,
I also think that there's a reason for that as well, that these things really start to present themselves. They may be around you for a really long time, but when we're open enough to be able to sort of receive them, or when we're ready, really, as well.
Yeah, but so I know, and I'm not saying that Chris is now a god in my life, although he probably thinks he is. I was
going to say we've now just elevated him to deity status.
Deity status. I should tell him, listen to this episode.
I love that one.
I mean, he's a Capricorn, so of course he's going to love that. Anything that puts him up on this pedestal.
That's right. We're all good.
But no, I'm explaining in a concept of, like,
these
gods could be around you and you're not even aware of it until you have that aha moment, and then all of a sudden all these things make sense.
Yeah. Well, see, that was the same with me with Odin. I kept getting a picture. I would have a visual, but it was him in his version of, like, the Wanderer, where he's a bit more of like the old man, almost a little bit Merlin-esque, you know, like that kind of thing. Because he has and all I'd ever known of him was more of the god of, like, of war and all of that sort of stuff. So I'd looked through all these other gods. I'm like, there's someone coming, someone coming. And I even looked for Kronos for a little while, like Father Time. And I'm like, no, that's not right. And it just kept going and going. And then eventually I found out who it was. And then it was like, and then everything clicked and everything else works. So sometimes they don't always come as easily as you think they might.
No.
Like as obvious as you might think. So.
Well, that's the same as like, for a long time, I've had this statue of Pan for years.
Yeah.
And I knew there was someone on my radar, horns, and I thought it was Pan. For years, I thought it was Pan. But it's like, if you look at many writings about Cernunnos, is that oftentimes he's confused with Pan. They are very different people in my mind to me, but they share a lot of common archetypal qualities.
Yeah. It's just more that they come from the different cultures that they have those separations.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because then when I bought my skull, which is actually a goat skull.
Yeah.
And I bought it with the intent of connecting with the horned god. So archetypal, the horned god is an archetype. It's not a person, it's an archetype, the horned god. Pan and Cernunnos are personifications of the horned god.
Yes.
As is Hern.
Yep. Yeah.
He's another one. And there's countless others. There are so many.
Lots.
There's so many names. But anyway, so I got that skull to connect with the horned god. And then because my horned god specifically has the name Cernunnos, when I said, I got this to connect with you, he laughed at me. And he's like, that ain't my energy. Sorry.
It's not me.
Like, what?
Say what?
but he's like,
I got it.
I mean, but that said, I still believe that it's relevant to me.
Yeah. And it's a representation, perhaps more like you said, it's a representation of that archetype, not of the
archetype, not specific Cernunnos. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for my other thing to arrive.
Yes, though. I know.
That's a conversation for another day.
Yes, that's right.
So, I guess, as we said, this conversation was really just to open the doorway.
Just to start to think about it.
Yeah, and see what resonates. Just have an open mind. Like, it could even be as simple as, I once said to Vicky, I thought that the Morrigan was knocking. Because I was seeing crows fucking everywhere.
Yep.
Everywhere. But again, the crows are also Odin. And the fact that crows appeared every time I spoke to you could even be him telling me, confirming that he's here when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, that's it.
But they're also connected to other deities as well.
It's
not just Odin and the Morrigan. There's so many that the crow is attached to.
Yep.
But it wasn't. That's why actually, when I went into that meditation, I thought the Morrigan was going to present herself.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't.
Nope.
Very wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So again, it just becomes that. Just be open.
Yeah. No expectations.
Rather than don't be super fixed. Don't be super fixed with it all. And that's, I hope, what we've tried to kind of convey a little bit with this episode is, even if perhaps you're in a particular tradition or something like that, or how you've been raised, that you have a particular perception of what deity is, or what God energy, goddess energy, all of those kind of things, just maybe start to be a little bit more open and really start to unpack for yourself what that means.
Yeah.
Not what someone else has told you or what somebody else has put on you, but just start to, what does that mean for you? And just start to have that thought.
And know that it can change. Just as you change and evolve, your belief system can change and evolve.
And that's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. In fact, it's probably the best, really, because it means that we're evolving and changing and growing, which is what we want to do as we move through things. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed this one.
Yes.
I hope we didn't confuse you too much.
I know. That's what I was saying. I hope I didn't confuse you.
But if there are any questions, comments, feedback, let us know either there or there, wherever the comments are.
Wherever it is, whatever you're watching on.
You're watching or listening on. Let us know what your thoughts are, or how you discovered, or if you even work with the gods, or if you're a completely secular practice. Yeah,
that's it. Do you work with gods or goddess energy or deity? What is your perception of deity? I would really love to hear other people's points of view. Again, not one way is the only way or my way is the right way kind of thing. Just having a discussion and just finding out what other people believe, other people think and believe, can just help to keep us nice and open-minded with things.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear it.
But on that note, until next time, we'll see you all soon.
See you soon. Bye.